Thank you, Governor Blanco. That was very inspiring and encouraging. I had the pleasure of, and the honor of serving on the governor's Women's Policy and Research Commission when Governor Blanco was governor. And I just want to mention, which she did not mention, was that one of the things that she instituted and established at that time was the Louisiana Women's Leadership Program and project that was designed to really acknowledge the women in the state who had assumed leadership roles in any capacity, and also then to encourage young women to move into leadership roles. So we found Governor Blanco not only really working as a woman herself, but also working particularly for other women in the state to see that other women also could succeed. And that was, in fact, a major part of her program prior to Katrina, when we all know that any good deeds any of us probably had or intentions were altered dramatically. So now we welcome some questions from the audience, and I think, anybody want to start? Okay, good.
Governor Blanco, I just want to let you know that because of your support of education and funding, I was able to become a department dean over at the Arts and Humanities Department at Delgado Community College. Had we not had that support, we would not have had the money for the training that I went through at the LCTCS in Baton Rouge. And I want to thank you for all of that, because I would not be here today if it had not been for you doing what you did.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. I was just wondering what your future plans are, and if you have a future in politics still, or...
Well, right now my future plans include traveling, and I have been doing some speaking around the country at both universities and in business groups, people interested in economic development. Those are my two passions. I also was invited to speak in Aix-en-Provence on disaster preparation. And so I think I'm just going to keep doing that for a while. And I'm going to spur on other candidates and look for people to replace people who have embarrassed us.
Hi, I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana too, so it's really nice to have you here. And I was just wondering what you think the greatest challenge facing women in Louisiana is today, and also if you could speak a little bit about the future of Louisiana, where you see our state going, and how we can fix some of the problems that we've had forever.
Louisiana's greatest problem, always has and still is poverty. And you have to take a very broad look at how to solve the problems of poverty. Just another poverty program doesn't get it. The underlying cause of poverty is a lack of a solid education. And so that is why education was always my strongest priority. You see, here in Louisiana, I have heard so many radio talk show hosts and other people who are repeating this inane remark saying, well, you can't make education better, you can't cure the problems of education by throwing money at it. Well, I have to say that in Louisiana, we never did experiment with that theory. So my commitment to building a stronger education system was first and foremost to empower young people so that they would not repeat the cycles of poverty, the generational poverty that we have seen over and again. And of course, I like to tell my business audiences that there's a quick cure for poverty, and that's to give a person a decent paying job. But if that person has not been prepared through the education system to function in that job, they will not be able to keep that job. So there's that tension, that tandem that has to be constantly in play. And we have to educate people for work and for, they have to be work ready. And so that's why the community college system and the technical college system is important to me, as well as higher education. I think that the whole tandem is extremely critical and important for Louisiana.
The Newcomb College Center for Research on Women has just published a report. It's online, Katrina and the Women of New Orleans. And in the report, you will find many of the details that Governor Blanco is actually talking about the poverty in Louisiana and in New Orleans, and what actually the effect of the hurricanes has had, particularly on the women. And you will be shocked, I think, as everyone who has read the report and compiled it together. So online, postcards are out there, and I'll inform yourself really about what is happening. And New Orleans women, by and large, also traditionally had been really, I would say, more prepared for the workforce and in many ways more educated. And so if this is what's happening to women in New Orleans, then we know women throughout the state are really also suffering. So the hurricanes actually have had a devastating blow, and we need to be aware of what has happened. So thank you for that moment. Who else wants a turn? Anybody? Oh, sorry. Oh, Kelly?
Governor Blanco, thank you for your comments. I'm Mary Benanti. I came all the way from New Mexico to hear you and Donna Brazell. So, and I'm really interested, because I teach women politics and media, in any ideas that you have as to how to get the mainstream media off our backs. I particularly noticed that it was MSNBC was extremely harsh on women during the last election cycle. I know you've experienced it. What, if anything, do you think we can do to make them get it?
Well, I think there's two things that we can do, and I think that we should organize an email attack effort every time we see an unfair statement, what we perceive as an unfair statement, and send it directly to the network. The other thing you can do is pay attention to their advertisers and send that same email response to whichever advertisers are on that particular program. And I do believe that they will react. I think it's kind of interesting right now that they've been focusing so much on President Obama's more casual look when he takes his jacket off in the Oval Office. I frankly think that's a counter-reaction to the fact that they've been accused of focusing on what women wear. You know, so I think you can affect them. I think that you can force them to change. They might not change the way you want them to. I mean, you know, what is so important and relevant about whether or not he wears a jacket in the Oval Office, and President Bush demanded that everyone wear a jacket in the Oval Office? I mean, you know, that's not earth-shaking, is it? But I think that you can, if enough people communicate their displeasure, if enough women, you know, when women are demeaned, express displeasure from it, then I think that does cause them to change.
I was going to say.
Hi. When Katrina hit, I was a mother of a young infant, and when we returned, I was forced to go back in the workforce for economic reasons, and almost prohibited from it because of lack of daycare. And I was wondering what the state is doing now to foster a daycare industry. And another part of my question is, what economic and, you know, what is the daycare industry? It seems like it would be an economic gain to support it, because it does bring women into the workforce and increase the economy. So
I can't speak for the policies that are currently being deployed. But when I was governor, we did a unique initiative by giving tax credits and rewards to daycare centers that held higher standards than the average. The storm has certainly turned life upside down here in this city, and you don't have access to the same things that once existed as a norm. But I do know that we tried very hard to make sure that we had daycare centers that were filled with people who were caring people and who were not doing harm to our children or just ignoring our children, giving them a good foundation in those basic elementary things that even little children must have to be stimulated so that they can develop their curiosity and carry it into academics in later life. I really don't know what's going on now. I do remember, though, there were some women that I met here in the city very shortly after the storm who had never run daycare centers, who had organized one in the city because of the need. And so they had found a new career for themselves. And so it could be that women in your circle who may not have who may have lost their jobs and their normal endeavors gone might be interested in emulating that effort to provide more. It is challenging. It's very difficult.
And you know, they did support, had incentives for the film industry and such. And is there anything
for the what?
For the film industry, there were incentive plans or anything like that. But it seems to me, is there anything for? Do you know of anything?
I'm not aware of anything in recent times.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for your service. You turned a term where it was very difficult. So first of all, thank you for that. Do you have any future programs for women in leadership?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Do you have any plans on doing any leadership for women in the state of Louisiana?
Do I have any plans for developing leadership?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
hoping to do something along those lines in the coming years. I'm working with a local group to establish something where we can bring more vitality into the workplace and into public office, frankly. I think it's really important. You know, you can help to govern from a distance, but there's nothing like being at the table and having a vote when the final decisions are made, because the compromise exercise really can deal you in or out of your most important initiatives. So I encourage you to be a full participant in the political scene. And right now, you know, mainly what you need to do is attach yourself to a candidate. Whether they win or lose, sometimes you learn as much when they lose, but I think a winning or losing candidate teaches you valuable lessons. And you can get a feel for the energy of a campaign, and then if your candidate wins, you might luck out and be able to stay with them through the work effort. And then you learn how the work of governing feels as well. So I think it's all important. You don't have to do that way, but it's a good way when you're young to begin your career. You know, there's no age limit either to political office. When I got elected to the legislature, a grandmother was elected at the same time that I was elected. That was her first political office. And Mary Landrieu was 23 when she was first elected to the legislature. So we had an age range there of, you know, first-time office holders from 23 to, I think this lady was from Monroe. She was in her 60s, and you know, and I was kind of in the middle there. But age is not a relevant factor in running for office. How you present yourself and how you interpret your existing background is what makes a difference. And how you react and interact with people is also very important. Be open. Don't mistreat anyone, even if you don't like them. You know, learn how to tolerate and understand people at many, many levels.
Is that understanding what got you through Katrina?
Yes, I think so.
Hi, Governor Blanco. I just want to say that it was so good to hear you speak. I remember watching you on TV, and I'm a native Louisianian, so it's really good to be here. But I had a question. In the aftermath of Katrina, there seemed to be a lot of finger pointing on different levels of government, at least from what we saw on TV, and I didn't know what you would make of that. And I was just wondering, like, as we look toward the future and we're talking about future female leaders and future leaders in general, is there any advice you would give to a future leader to ensure that that doesn't happen again?
Well, let me just say that I was shocked when the whole effort became politicized. I think what actually happened is the national media began to criticize President Bush for the lack of an adequate response. Because our federal government is considered the biggest, strongest, most powerful federal government in the world, literally. And it was inconceivable that they had not thrown everything that they had on their checklist at our problems. Obviously, we were the ones who were in the field pulling people off of roofs and getting people to safety. We had about 400 boats from Wildlife and Fisheries deployed immediately with courageous souls who were going out there and climbing on roofs and helping people out of their attics. We had a huge number of National Guard members who were also deploying life-saving efforts. The irony is, I have to tell you this about the National Guard. One of the reporters said that the American Red Cross had helicopters in the air and the National Guard had none, when the American Red Cross doesn't own a helicopter. And the National Guard helicopters all have big red crosses on them, you know. So, you know, a lot of credit didn't come to the right people. But we had huge numbers of National Guard members deployed, and I was calling those from out of state because at least a third of our National Guard was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan at the moment of the storm. Anyway, we had volunteers. We called them the Cajun Navy because volunteers from South Louisiana just organized themselves and paraded in with their boats and got in the waters to save people's lives. So essentially, we were doing it on our own. I mean, you know, I was moving all of these troops and all of this activity into the disaster zone as fast as possible. But the federal government, especially through FEMA, failed us. We have the Coast Guard here, which is federal, but they are automatically in. You don't have to call the Coast Guard into action. That's part of their responsibility at the local level. So, you know, the biggest disaster that occurred was the FEMA buses did not come on time, and I kept talking to the White House, please get those buses here. Can't you get buses here? We were sending school buses in. We weren't ignoring the fact that people needed transportation out of here, but we couldn't get a substantial enough school buses through the people who were stranded on the highways. Those people who were being rescued were being put out in the 98-degree sun up on hot cement with their children and sometimes their elderly parents and waiting for rescue. Here, people had a roof over their heads, but the bus drivers could not pass those other people by just to come into the city. That humanitarian spirit that works in a disaster says, oh my God, here, we've got to get these people out of here. So finally, when the buses came on, were able to drive in on Thursday morning after the storm, a lot of misery had been programmed out to the nation, and they were also citing all of this lawlessness, this purported lawlessness. And we know people will loot for food and water and formula for their children if necessary. I would do the same thing. But you know, there was an element of danger that was being programmed, like our people were in so much danger. So I had to really think hard about how to handle all that. The national media was out of control, frankly. And we, you know, I just ordered the National Guard to get some military police together to show force, to calm things down, and that is what calmed things down. And we were able to then do a rescue mission. It was very, very trying and difficult in those immediate days, and the president began to be severely criticized. I think what happened is that his political office decided to try to defend him by pointing fingers and saying, well, it's their fault. It's not our fault, it's their fault, meaning the people at the local level, the governor, the mayor, all of us, it was our fault. You know, when you want to stop and point fingers, I was not pointing fingers. I was simply saying, send help, please send help. They were saying, okay, we're trying to get it to you. And in doing that, I wasn't really paying so much attention to what was going on at the national level, but, you know, in retrospect, I can see what was going on. When Karl Rove, who is a political operative in the White House, decided that, you know, they were going to hold back, and we don't really know why they held back the military assistance. That has never been explained by anyone who was in those decision-making positions at that time. You know, we can speculate. There's a lot of speculation, and you can speculate from the ugliest, say, in political motivation or practical reasons. Well, we don't really know what the reasons are. But, you know, so then suddenly, here we are saving lives and working like crazy, and we have the guns turned on us. And that is just an unfair thing to do in a disaster. You know, and I would take great umbrage and tell anyone who's working a disaster to be very, very careful about that and to staff up on your media people. We were outgunned by the national media people. We got some help. We actually got a lot of help from a lot of states. Governors who saw what was going on sent their PR people in. But it was bigger than us. When you have the national and the international media coming at you, that is a huge problem. It is very hard to deal with the noise that comes out of that. You see, the Washington Post wrote something that they didn't bother to check, so any of you who are going into journalism need to remember this lesson. On the front page of the Washington Post, Monday, a week after the storm, they wrote a big story saying that the White House had told them that that the governor of Louisiana had not bothered to sign a disaster declaration until after the storm hit landfall. It was up on my website and reported in the Picayune and the Advocate that I signed it on Friday evening before the storm. But they put out a lie which became a part of the national conscious of why it was partly my fault. And they were working hard to save the president's reputation. I don't blame them for working hard to save the president's reputation. All he had to do in that moment was to send all he had. That would have saved the president's reputation.
Good morning. Yesterday, Donna Brazile talked a little bit about Hillary Clinton's campaign strategy and how it maybe wasn't as strong as it could have been. Could you speak to the confluence of factors in your strategy for going into the governor's mansion? You mentioned you defeated 24 men when you won the election.
Well, one of the cardinal rules of all of my campaigns was to spend your money wisely where it really counts. And one of the things that I see candidates do is to start buying paraphernalia, fingernail files with your name on it, you know, all kinds of little gadgets. And the gadget people love candidates, and they'll tell you this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I'm going to tell you, don't do it. Don't waste your money that way. You have to learn how to raise money, and that is one of the keys. Hillary Clinton's campaign ran out of money at a critical time. So your fundraising efforts have to be long and strong, and I would say you have to prepare for a long time. Come out far ahead raising money. Declare your intentions to your friends, your family, your neighbors, and start raising money from the people you know. Then as you get some momentum, you branch out and go cold calling. Raising money is one of the biggest challenges. As I told you, my husband was an educator, and we didn't have personal money. In my first race, I ran against the wife of the richest man in all of Acadiana, and they spent $500,000 in that race against me. And in the primary, I only spent $20,000, and in the runoff, another $40,000. So you see, you can win against financial odds, but you have to be pretty clever about how you spend your money. They were buying full-page ads in the newspaper, and I spent my money on television. They were buying T-shirts for all of, you know, and giving them away to anybody who would take one. We never bought a T-shirt. I think at the end, my children bought T-shirts saying, vote for my grandmother, or vote for my mom. I'm sorry, I didn't have grandchildren. Vote for my mom. You know, but those were personal expenditures, not campaign. So I would tell you, you have to use your money as wisely as possible. You have to get a good platform, understand what you believe in, and articulate what you believe in and your willingness to fight for what you believe in. Those are some key ingredients that you have to do. And then go out and find the people where they are. Don't be shy. And you can also get your friends and family to walk with you. A door-to-door campaign in a local campaign, or you know, a smaller regional campaign is a key, because people will vote for you for the strangest reasons. They'll say, you were the first to ask, I will vote for you. And no matter who comes behind you, no matter how good they are or not, or if somebody went before you, no matter how bad they are or not, they'll say, I've already committed. They came to talk to me first. So try to get out ahead of that curve. They might vote for you because you have a pretty smile. They might vote for you because they like the sound of your voice. They might vote for you because of your platform, but don't be shocked if that's the last thing that they'll look at. But have one anyway, because in the end, the newspapers will hold you accountable for that. And it's just, there are certain dynamics that come into play. And as we moved from the local campaign to the regional campaign, we still kept the financial rules in place. And really, when I ran for governor, we did the same thing. But when I ran for lieutenant governor, we were not going to have bumper stickers printed. And one of our good friends said, I've got to have a bumper sticker. And my husband said, well, go out and have some printed if you want them on your own. You know? So it was, you know, yard signs are a good investment. Television is a great investment. And some radio's now become more meaningful, but you have to have enough money because you have such a big spread. There are so many radio stations in each and every district. So raise money, raise money, raise money. Spend it right, spend it right, spend it right. Go out and be a warm, gracious human being. That's what people are looking for. You know, in the end, they look deeper. They try to figure out what's at the core. And I think that is what happened, and that's probably why I won the governor's office, because I did run against Bobby Jindal, who ended up in the runoff. And when I beat Jindal, I believe it was because I was able to demonstrate a basic core that people understood and identified with a little better than he was, than he was able to do so. I think this is about our last question.
Thank you again for allowing me the privilege of introducing you this morning. As I said earlier, I'm working on a research project looking at women's leadership rebuilding New Orleans following Katrina, and I'm kind of interested specifically in what motivates women to leave maybe traditional roles in their careers or at home and to assume these positions. And you spoke a little bit about what led you to kind of leave your fenced-in area, but I didn't know if you could articulate further whether your motivators were internal and personal or whether you had outside encouragement to kind of enter the public realm.
Well, at that first moment when I decided to enter politics, I didn't have anybody directly pushing me into it. My husband loves politics, and he's a great genius on strategy, campaign strategy. But I don't think he wanted his wife in the middle of the fray, not initially. And, you know, we had to have a lot of closet talk after I decided to run. But before I ever decided to run, I did have two interesting encounters with women. I was doing that, I worked for the Census Bureau in 1980 for the decennial census, and they hired me to be the director, and I was in charge of 11 parishes. But in the immediate aftermath of that work, I was hired by local government to do some reapportionment work. And reapportionment is near and dear to the hearts of every person who runs in a district. You know, they don't want you to cut their mothers and fathers out of their district and their favorite aunts and uncles. So I was doing that kind of challenging work, and that's when I had my Bill Gates revelation as opposed to Bill Gates. But we just took it upon ourselves to, and I've kind of lost the essential question.
I'm just wondering if your motivation to enter public office.
Oh, I see. Yeah, my initial motivation came from me, but two ladies had just walked up to me in odd places at different times over different periods, maybe like 3 or 4 months apart, and said to me, "You ought to run for office. We've been watching you." I had to do a lot of publicity for the Census Bureau and for that decennial census of that year. And they said, "We've been watching you, and you communicate well and in an interesting way, and you ought to run for political office." And I was deeply complimented, but I thought, that's not me. That's just not me. I had two identical encounters from two totally different women. And I guess I would say they planted a small seed. It was not nurtured immediately. While I was doing the reapportionment work, some of my friends would come in and say, "What are you doing?" Because I had maps spread out all over my dining room. And I said, I'm drawing these balanced districts for reapportionment for these local governments up the way, different parishes. And they said, "Well, you're doing one for Lafayette. You ought to draw yourself a district, and you ought to run for office." And I thought, I can't do that. I'm not going to, stain my work. I need to be able to stand by my work and let it be objective. And so I was finished with that for quite some time. I'd done all that kind of consulting work. And my local legislator announced his retirement. And the ladies had been talking about me running for local government, and I had less interest in local government than I did in the legislative work. And I began to realize that I had read everything through the years since I was in college about how laws were made and the laws that were being debated and how they ended up being changed. And I understood the moment I saw that my local legislator was retiring that is where my interest would lie, and not in local government. That was for me. Some people love local government. So when I told my husband, when I saw the guy retired, and I told him that I wanted to run, he said, and bless his heart, he said, "You have 6 children. What are we going to do when you're off in Baton Rouge?" And I said, "I don't know, but we could maybe figure it out." And I want to tell you a personal story that after, well, at first when I was going to Baton Rouge, every weekend I'd have 4 burners going, and I would cook enough meals for the whole week. And at the end of one of the sessions, we were working Saturday and Sunday. We worked for like 21 straight days without a break. And I could not get home to cook. I was commuting from Lafayette. And even at that time I was commuting, but I was coming home too late. And so my husband was challenged. He was a spoiled husband, I have to say. Didn't know how to boil water. But when he found himself in charge of the 6 children, he called me one day and he said, "I have had all the fast food I could possibly eat. I cannot eat another hamburger, another French fry, another pizza, another bite of fried chicken. Can you teach me how to cook?" And I taught him how to cook over the phone. I was working in the dark as he was stirring the pots. I taught him several things, and one of them was how to make his mother's wonderful spaghetti, meatballs and spaghetti. His mother was of Italian origin. And till today, I do not cook that spaghetti. He does, because he does a much better job than I ever did. And he is a wonderful cook and a gourmet cook, and that's a talent he did not know that he could nurture or that he would have. But it's one of the good things that came out of our experience. So, there's a whole mixture of things that go on.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you, Governor Blanco, for your willingness to answer so many varied questions. Thank you. And please join me then in thanking Governor Blanco.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.